G'day guys, today I thought I'd do a video going through all of my electrical tools, what I use on the site generally, and tools that I don't use much anymore. So I'll go through absolutely everything. So other than what's here, I do use a 4-step ladder and a 7-step ladder. As you'll see, all of my power tools here, I no longer carry a lead or a multi-box with me, don't need one. There are a few on my wish list, such as a laser level, a proper digital TV reception finder, and I also want a vacuum pump. First of all, got the site broom here, just sweep up after new builds, don't really carry that around much. Shovel and brush, always in the van. Aircon gear. So we've got some refrigerant gauges here, flaring set. Got some crescents here, 10 to 12 inch, and then also a wee 8 inch. Miter box, I don't use that much, but it's good for having when you're cutting aircon ducts. Here I have stuff that usually rocks around in my pocket. So we marker pen and one of these volt sticks. I do not recommend these ones that have low and extra low voltage on them. The old school Milwaukee ones are much better. I would be doing a video comparing them all because I've used nearly every volt stick under the sun. Tool belt here. So what I got on the tool belt's my clamp meter, pliers. These are good Nipix ones. I can spin them in one hand. Same with side cutters. Got a magnet on here. Throw all the screws and crap. Number 2 square drive. Terminal driver. Number 2 Phillips. Now there's a 4mm flathead or slotted. It's been used, this one's 7 years old. Works well as a chisel. I did shave the ends down on it a wee bit so I can fit it into square drive screws. I don't know if you can see, just filed them, rounded them off a wee bit. And I got some long nose pliers here. Other thing is just a roll of tape. So on my tool belt here, I've got the CL800. Really like this clamp meter. It has got a wee illuminated display and light on the end of it. If you're going to go for a multimeter, always get a clamp meter. So on the tool belt here, this here sits on my right hand side closest to my front, and my slotted screwdriver is always the most accessible, and then my pliers always sit at the back, so I know that my pliers and then sideys are on here. The reason I don't have a posi driver on here, just because of slippage. The Phillips one, number 2 Phillips, actually gets a tighter lock onto things, and you can torque things up a bit more. So I don't keep one on my person generally. The other reason is because there's a lot of Phillips appliances and other things that you do need to tend to on the daily. Next thing, cable roller. This one here, you can actually fit the wooden mains cable drum on here for single core neutral screen, so it's a good size. Moving over here is all my power tools. So first thing here is battery charger. It's the only thing in my kit that needs to be test tagged, and it needs a new tag. I was looking today and it had expired, so I'll throw a new one on it. LED flashlight. This is awesome, going under floors and in ceilings with. Illuminates it perfectly, and it's small enough that it fits in your hand nicely. Multi-tool, this one here was a replacement for one that was stolen, so it's in pretty new condition. So there's my hammer drill. I always keep the 6mm bit in it. I do have other bits for it that I seldom use, so they just live in the tool bag. Next one's the recip. This is bloody handy to have, and it's a good solid tool. Angle grinder. So this is one of the old style ones without the safety switch on it. Impact driver. This one looks newer than a lot of my tools because I never used to use it a lot. Next thing is the vacuum. These are bloody handy to have and clean everything up that your shovel and brush can't get. Drills. Small drill here, I use all the time. And nice grunty one for drilling through dwangs, doing new builds and things. My skilly, always handy to have. And then obviously few batteries and things. So that completes my Makita set. Next bit of kit, And here's my multifunction tester. I won't go through that much detail in this video. And then under there's the socket set. Now that's a brand new one because my other one was stolen. Right, next gear, some safety gear. Now there's my respirator. So it did used to have welding rated or asbestos filters on there. I'd have to look and see what those ones are that are on it at the moment. I don't know off the top of my head. Got some goggles. I don't generally take these around in the van. They just live in the garage. High vis and hard hat. Always make sure your hard hat's in date. When they get brittle, they don't work properly. That's not a joke either. Solvents and things. Cable lube. Washes off with water. Throw that on the cables. Helps you pull them through walls and things like that. Conduit glue. Gluing bits of conduit together. Dazzle. There's a marker for marking flush box locations and new builds. Butane. There's a refill for my small gas torch. And then I've got some cable glide here. This stuff I use quite often and wouldn't go without it. Pretty much the same as this, but not water based. Shaving foam. Where there's risk of asbestos, try and use that. Some smoke alarm testing solution. Wonder wipes. Can never go without them. They're one of the best tools. We've got some fire krill sealant for fireproofing applications. So generally I use this on switchboards or where cable penetrations need it for firewalls and things like that. And then silicone in a caulking gun. Now that is my small one. I do have better ones, but I don't take them round because I don't need them. Right, my big hole saws. So first off, this is a 159mm. And this cuts your outside grills perfectly. Oh, that's not good if that falls out. Tighten that back in there. You don't end up having to cut any of the feet out after you've played around with it. So 159mm is the way to go. I've got a 102mm, I think this one is. Anyway, that's to cut out your 100mm stuff. Again, with ducting, you sort of have to cut it out a wee bit with a jib saw or whatever. This is my 152mm for indoor. I would have preferred to get a bigger one, but unfortunately this is all they had on the shelf at the time when I needed it. So this one here's a 89mm, cutting out downlights and soffits. Again, another external one. Over here, now this is pump for pumping down hot water cylinders, changing elements. Don't have much use for it these days. Over here we've got some big tools. Got my big level. Use that mainly for doing towel rails, conduits, panel heaters, mounting things on walls. Got a small spade here. Use that for trenching or digging around things outside. A nice handsaw. Can't go wrong with one of those. Map gas. So I use the stuff for thick wall heat shrink and obviously brazing. Over here got a sledgy. That's just a Bunnings one, does the job. And then I got my cable rods. So I got the long ones, the 1 meter ones. And these are bloody handy to have. Fishing down walls, whatever, getting things under the house. They work a treat. Electronic tools, there's some of them. So I got my cable ferret here. I have done a video on the ferret Wi-Fi. So all the bits of the kit are in there. And that there's basically a wireless camera that's compatible with these rods. So you can hook this wireless camera on the end of one of these rods and inspect inside a wall or ceiling or wherever you need to look. Here is a cable toner, so you can tone and find where cable ends are. You definitely need one of these. And then a label maker. Right, next thing we'll go through this tool bag. Now while I was preparing for the video, I did a bit of a clean out and tidy up of the bag because usually it's not in this state. It's actually full of crap, but for this video I've tidied it up. So usually when it's in the van I do have my tool belt sitting on there, and I may have a couple of these other bits and pieces inside the tool bag here. Right, first of all I have, this is a tool belt, but generally it just sits in the tool bag and it takes all the small things in it. There's a number of appliance repairing bits and pieces of kit in this, so I know always where they are. First of all, we've got a paintbrush. That there's just for dusting out appliances, switchboards, things like that, and that lives in the end pocket here. Then we've got a couple of these panel removers. They work well for appliances. Pry something open and you don't want to mark the bloody thing with a screwdriver. And then there's some thermal grease. Use that quite a lot with some appliances. Next thing hangs off the side. Cable strippers. I only tend to use these if I'm standing in one place for ages stripping heaps of cable. Then in this pocket here I got a couple of pens and a builder's pencil. Always try and keep the builder's pencil in there. The pens always go missing. They were just floating around the bag, so I threw them in there now. Next pocket, this front one, I've got a couple of crescents here. Now this Barco one is my best one, and this is ideal for plumbing fittings on appliances when you have to remove them and things like that. Next pocket, I got my small level and a Stanley knife. I would like a wee magnet on this one because there is none built into it. And then in the side here I got my deburring tool, just copper on appliances and aircon. There's some spare blades in there. Now in the top here I've got a big flathead. Generally use this one for opening up hatches. It's not really usable for anything else. Got my jigsaw. This one's 7 years old, still doing me well. Right, next things are my other screwdrivers. Massive flathead. Got my number 1 square. Always need that because some pricks put number 1 square drive screws in things. And then there is some small things like alarm keypads and stuff where these are actually, number 1 screws are actually really handy. My posi driver lives in here, and then another slotted, a smaller one. Right, now on the inside here, tape measure. I got my small gas torch. Now this is awesome, works well with heat shrink. Right down the bottom here I have this soldering attachment for it, so I can do some solder work in the field. And the other part to go with that is some desoldering wick. Conduit cutters, just for cutting conduit. Spare builder's pencil, because you always tend to lose one. There's a temperature sensor for the multimeter. I don't know how accurate they are. I mean, the instructions say that they're within 1 degree. Bit of solder, goes with the solder stuff. And then I got my cutting tool for copper pipe. Again, use that on both aircon and appliances. And last of all, I got my number 1 Phillips. I do have a screwdriver in one of these, but I have lost it in the garage somewhere. So I tend to rock around with this in my tool belt. Sweet, so that's all the gear in there. Now we'll move on to the actual tool bag. First of all, this is the end that faces outwards when it sits in the back of the van. So I got my safety glasses here in this wee pouch, which is pretty ripped. And I mean, this tool bag's in a bit of a state. It's been through the ringer. So in here I have got spare blades for my multi-tool. And then in this other pouch I just keep all of my drill bits and a drill bit extender or impact smaller extender. I have got a bigger one in the main compartment. Other things I got some smaller drill bits here. Got a countersink, and that one's a spare hole saw one, spare Allen key. There's all sorts of bits in here. Tend to use the spade ones the most often, and then there's a couple of square drive. Well, that one's almost a circle. And then down further, there's I don't know if you can see properly, there's a couple of tile bits for drilling through tiles and other bits and pieces that you tend to use quite a lot. The other thing is you always tend to need a 13mm or 10mm drill bits. They come in quite handy. The only thing that's not in here is my 25mm spade bit. I need to get a new one, it's buggered. Right, on the side here, so my hacksaw just literally sits in there, as do I've got a couple of spare cutting blades for the grinder. And then in here I've got an assortment of bits and pieces for screws. This is back when I didn't have a separate screw tray, I just shoved everything in here. So there is a couple of spare bits and pieces in there, and then there's a bit of hemp in there for plumbing fittings. On the other side I have my head torch in here. I don't know why I've got a wee flashlight. that's no good. That's going in the taken out pile. And then I got all my stubby drives in here. So a square, a Phillips, and a slotted. My Allen keys all fit in here. Generally use these ones most of the time. And then this far one, always take round a bit of deodorant, bit of hand sanitizer, and my gloves. Now this is mainly my data and TV gear. So what I have in here is my Ethernet tester. Put a bit of tape over the switch because it always tended to switch on and waste the battery when it was in the case. So this goes on one end of the cable, this goes on the other end. You run through the tests and make sure that everything links up. Punch down tool, tend to use that quite a lot. Where I don't, sometimes use a knife for Stanley knife. Ethernet crimping tool. Other things that are in this pocket are a coax cable stripper. So this is your aerial cable, and I only really tend to use this if I'm doing a lot of them at once. If I'm only doing a single one or two, I'd probably just use my side cutters. The other things are these other ends for my compression tool. So you can do BNCs, RCAs, other compression fittings, and over here's the compression tool. Now these three tools here live in my screw tray. So if you want to know what's in the screw tray, go check out my other video on that. At the time, only my Utilux crimping tool lived inside here, and these two didn't. But now all three of these actually live in the base of this. The toolbox on top, this is my electronics gear, mainly for doing PCB boards and repairing stuff on there. So there's a lot of gear in here, capacitors and other smaller tools to work with them with. This doesn't come with me out in the field, it just lives in the garage. With charging out Sparky rates, we can't justify fixing things for customers like that. So just quickly, while I'm going through this stuff, I'll go through these which live in the bottom of here. So here's your Utilux crimpers. Now these ones are for doing the uninsulated Utilux fittings, crimp links and your lugs. This here's the compression tool. As I was saying before, this one here is for doing your TV ends on cables. So in there's the F-type compression fitting. And then these other crimpers are just ones for doing your insulated crimps. So they all live in the base of this. First thing, I always keep my earmuffs on top of the handlebar there, so they're easy to grab when I need them. Then I've got some catenary wire here, and I use this to hook cables with. Works perfect. I use them heaps, so I keep them in the tool bag. And then I have got some thinner gauge, more flexible catenary wire here. I don't really use this stuff, but I always have it in here just in case. On the side here, I got my tapes, I got my ductine tape, and then I got some spare electrical tape. Now inside the bag, so we'll start with some of the tools on the side here. So right here I have my cable loppers. This here cuts through thick cable really nicely. I've got my ferrule crimper. It's a ratchet one. Works really nicely with ferrule crimps. It is adjustable to any size, so you can put any size, I think up to, what is it, 10 mil or something. It does all the ones that I use it for anyway, up to 6 mil, so I'm sussed. And then I got some of these slip jaws, and they are lockable ones. They work really nicely. I've got my crimping tool, my big one. This does up to 50 mil. Always need one of those. Got a rag in here, dirty rag. Hammer. Now this is my spare hammer. My good hammer is missing in the garage somewhere. Got some center punches here. Don't really use those much at all. Element key. This here is for removing hot water cylinder elements. Again, this thick screwdriver here is good to use with that. So I got my long extension bit, or my spade bits I use this with predominantly. Nail puller, or like mini crowbar, that there works a treat. Auger bit, always come in handy. Nails, use those for new builds, hooking cables around the side edges, just makes the job a lot faster. Chalk line, this is really bloody handy tool to have, really good for doing downlights, especially if there's a heap of them. I would prefer to use a laser if I had one. I'd still keep this in my kit though. Always get the blue stuff because you can paint over it. The orange stuff apparently has some sort of chemical in it that shows through the paint. Now, hole saws. Some of these I use a heap of the time, others I don't. I've got a ton of sizes here. My main one here is my 90mm one. I think this one's 92. Yeah, 92mm. Use that one a lot for downlights. The other ones, just for general purpose things. 40mm and 50mm I use quite regularly actually. There goes a 51mm. So those two, a 40 and a 50. I'd recommend getting those. And then a 25, 20, a 32 and a 92. And then your 100 and 150mm. This one here's a 35mm. Don't know what I use that last for. These need cleaning out. Get into the habit of cleaning them out before you reuse them. Here's my smaller hole saws. So my 25s. That one's 29. As you can see, my 20mm and 25mm have been used quite a lot. I have got my square in here. Use this a lot, and this is really, really handy to getting proper straight lines on things. On the side here, I've got a file. This one's got one flat side and one curved side. I like it because it replaced me having multiple files in the tool bag. A big, I think that one's a 10mm masonry bit. Now I'm not going to bother pulling these out, but I have got some vice grips here, and then I've got some shears, metal shears. I've got some paste for using with hemp on plumbing fittings. Now here I've got my wood chisel, and I do need a new set of these. This one's quite buggered, and I want to get multiple sizes. I've only got the one size at the moment, so I would recommend getting multiple sizes of those. And then my cold chisel here, this one's for smashing out masonry. String line, just for leveling stuff. I don't use that very often at all. And then I don't know why I've got connectors sitting there, but I do. So that completes the tool bag. The other thing I missed was this long drill bit. I use this quite often. It's really good and it's flexible for going through walls. I think this one here is 900mm in length. Now the last part I'll go through is things that I used to carry around with me and no longer do. Things like these bolt cutters. I used to have them in the work van. Only used them once to cut a bike lock. I don't use those anymore, they just live at home. Stub finder. It still looks brand new, as you can tell. I've probably only used it once. Most Sparkies don't need them. Obviously that flashlight's a bit of rubbish. Crowbar. I haven't really used this for anything, so there was no purpose carrying it around. I got the small nail puller in the bag over there, in the tool bag. Next thing is my cable tie gun. Now, I used to do a bit of industrial work by the same thing, this cable stripper, so I didn't get much use out of them. I probably used them for about 5 weeks and then haven't used them since, so they don't go in the work van. I predominantly do commercial and residential work. Soldering iron, no need for it. I got the gas one there, plus I got rid of the 230 volt lead and multi-box I don't need anymore. I do like to carry a spare multimeter around with me, so this does live in the tool bag. You never know if you need a spare one for something. Dust poles, they were bloody handy. I really got no use for them now. Clamp meters much more preferred. Speed bit, really don't use that much anymore. Rivet for this. For my drill bit set. And my tap and die set. Years ago I used to build switchboards, no longer do, not currently anyway, so I don't need this sort of gear in the van. There's also some calipers in here. Now I've never actually used these in the field, just in the garage, so they now live in the garage. Drill bit set, I mean I have pulled a couple of drill bits out of here that I do use in the field a lot, but you don't need one for every size. Signal meter for your TV cables. I don't even use this, I just basically plug and play. If the TV's not getting great reception, just adjust the antenna, that usually does the trick. Site radio, usually builders have got these on site, so I don't even take this round anymore. Heat gun, again, as for now, just use gas torches anyway. The other thing is a jigsaw. Now I would like an 18 volt jigsaw, very handy tool, but again, this was predominantly used when I was building switchboards, so I no longer need it. The other thing I do have, which I can't find at the moment, is a Klein circuit tracer. I found it quite useless, to be honest, so I don't carry it around with me, hence I can't find it. It's probably in the garage somewhere. I'll be doing some demonstrations in the future on how to use some of these tools, or just small reviews on them. I mean, I've used most of them for years, so I can do some pretty good reviews. Let me know if there's any requests that you'd like to see here, if there's any tools that you want to buy and want to know if it's worth buying. I mean, most of the tools I use here are worth buying. And yeah, that's basically all my electrical tools. If you've got any questions, just smash it down in the comments. Throw us a subscribe if you haven't already.